Welcome to What's Up Wichita. We are here with host Mayor Brandon Whipple. The mayor's joined by City of Wichita Finance Director Mark Manning. This month, they're discussing the 2022 to 2023 city budget.
Hey everyone, this is Mayor Brandon Whipple with this month's episode of What's Up Wichita. Today we have Mark Manning joining us. He is the director of the finance department here at the city. We're in an exciting time right now where we are going over the budget and the budget process here at the city, and Mark is the guy who knows the ins and outs and is going to talk to us a little bit about that. So Mark, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Mayor. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Well, we're glad to hear. Glad we can pull you out of the the offices right up on the 11th floor or something. 12th floor, where all you guys are working hard to make sure that the budget balances and that we have a good product moving forward. Yeah. So we're going to jump right into it. Okay. The budget, as we can see, it's pretty detailed. Yeah. There's a lot going on with it, but the process also is extensive. It's not just make sure that the numbers add up, but also make sure we get some input. So can you talk to us just a little bit about, I guess, that process and what it takes to put a budget together?
Sure. Putting the budget together is a very extensive process, as you indicated, and we want to provide the best information possible so that the City Council can make the best choices possible for our community. So we begin usually about January and February. We start analyzing data, we start looking at trends in our environment, we start considering economic activity in our environment. We want to project revenues as accurately as possible, again, to provide the City Council flexibility to appropriate resources to achieve outcomes.
So we talk about, and I'm going to stop you periodically, sure, just because I've been in government for a while, and so I understand some of these words, but I really want to break this down. When we talk about projecting revenue, can you tell us a little bit what projecting revenue is?
Sure. The city has a variety of revenue sources: property tax, sales tax. We charge rent in some occasions. We charge fees for certain services. And my job is to analyze all those various revenue sources and try to determine the amount that we think that we will collect in the future. And again, I want to be as accurate as possible.
You have a crystal ball?
Yeah, I wish I did. A magic 8 ball.
Because it changes though, right?
It does.
So you might have one year where we're going to get so much property taxes or sales tax, I think is one, particularly in a legislature that was always kind of a moving target. Because if people don't go out and buy stuff as much as you might predicted, then if you don't do a proper analysis, you might budget for money that you don't have.
That's exactly right. And we want to avoid doing that. We want to give the best information possible, but there's no doubt about it, it's a challenge, but we try to do the best we can.
Yeah, so one of the things that you mentioned in our last city council meeting is somewhat of a cushion that you guys built in. I think it was either 4 or 5%, where you take your best educated estimate on what the revenue will be, so you know how much money to spend. But if it's not exactly what normally, if something happens, let's say COVID, let's say something crazy happens, what normally do you guys do to ensure that the city's numbers are still adding up?
Well, we try to be conservative in our estimates. We have a dilemma. We want to provide the best accurate information to the City Council so they can appropriate as much money as possible to achieve outcomes, but we also want to be relatively conservative, so if something like COVID hits, that we have the flexibility that we can reduce our expenditures without disrupting programs. So it's a fine balance between those two, and that's the needle that we try to weave with our revenue forecast, but it's definitely a challenge.
So you worked at the state level before this, is that correct?
Yes, sir, I did.
Which is easier?
I think the state was a little bit easier, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Well,
numbers were bigger, but it was a little easier.
Well, where's the majority of our money in our budget? Where does that come from?
Most of our money comes from a couple sources. We do levy property taxes, and that'll be about 20% of our total budget, but we operate a water and sewer utility, and that actually is one of our larger operations. So we collect a lot of money for water and sewer, and of course we need that to pay for treating water and for the infrastructure we need for water. We also get a little bit in sales tax. Well, we get it from the county. We don't have a sales tax, as you know. But we get a little bit through the county on sales tax, and then there's a variety of other amounts we get from gas tax and other things.
And some of those are actually, I don't know the terms earmarked, but it's specific. So for example, gas tax, we can't just take gas tax and use it to, I don't know, buy another zoo, right? Like, can you explain
sure.
how how it gets more complicated than just all winding up in one bucket.
No, you're exactly right, Mayor. A lot of our revenue streams are dictated by state statute. Gas tax, for example, we can only use gas tax to maintain our streets. And we do maintain our streets, so it's not a problem, but that's what gas tax is for. Sales tax, for example, we have a resolution where we use half of that to finance road and bridge and freeway improvements, and we use the other half for the general fund. But a lot of our revenue streams are dictated for certain purposes, and we obviously follow that.
Excellent. So when we do the budget process, from what I can tell is we take a lot of the structure of the previous budget because you guys project out. Mm-hmm. So this budget here isn't just about this year, but also laying the foundation for next year. Right. What changes usually in your experience during that time? Is there ever any taking it from here to there where something happens where we got to make some significant changes, and how do you guys respond to that?
Yeah, that can happen. Obviously, we would prefer that not to happen. One reason we do long-term forecasts is we want to provide continuity of service levels to our residents. That's one thing the City Council wants to do, and we certainly want to do that by providing accurate long-term forecasts. But you're right. Our world is not perfect. A lot of times things happen that we don't expect. Obviously, last year, the pandemic, we did not predict.
It's the story of me being mayor. A lot of times things happen that you don't expect.
and it's our job to provide flexibility to adapt to stuff like that. And that's, again, the long-term forecast helps us do that because we identify trends and we can identify things that impact those trends, and we can use that to provide the best information possible to the decision makers.
So, Mark, we all owe you and your team really a debt of gratitude where the idea of really I think what people sign up for when they probably work for you in a budget department is putting this together. Yeah. But this year's unique. We have revenue coming in from the federal government from multiple streams when it comes to ARPA, which is the American Rescue Plan, when it comes to the other COVID money that passed under the previous president. Right. How are you guys adjusting to ensure that not only the stuff that carries over each year, but also these other strands of money that they get back into the community and used appropriately?
Yeah, ARPA has presented a fantastic opportunity for the City of Wichita, as did the CARES Act money, and they provide a great deal of flexibility for us and for the City Council. So my job really is to understand ARPA, understand all the rules and regulations, and again, provide the City Council with the best possible advice or recommendations on how that money can be used. And you're right, it's a great opportunity for the city. We can do some really good things and address challenges to certain populations in certain geographic areas of the city. So it is a great opportunity, but it has presented additional work for us, but that's good. It's good for the community.
Good exercise.
So we're happy to do it.
Well, and it's interesting where last year when we were during the budget process, we actually made cuts to the budget. Mm-hmm. We proceeded as if there would be no help from the federal government, right. Which basically we don't have a crystal ball. Right. We don't know if the federal government will help us backfill some of some of the revenue streams that are now going to not come through because of the pandemic. Right. And then this year it seems almost the opposite, where stuff did come through. So what was it like last year to try to find cuts? And then we could talk about this year. But coming into the budget cycle, knowing that we were going to be in a pandemic for a while, what was that like?
It was a huge challenge for staff. Again, we want to provide the best information possible, but a lot of times, our situation was very dynamic last year. So it was very challenging, and we don't want to overproject revenues because then that'll force us to cut back later. So we try not to do that. We ultimately turned out we were relatively accurate. Was that due to skill or due to luck? I don't know, but I hope it's due to skill. But yeah, last year was a tremendous challenge. But fortunately, we're in a lot better position this year, as you indicated.
And it's interesting. Last year we had to cut. How much did we cut last year?
We cut about $13 million.
$13 million. And I'll tell you right now, and I've said this multiple times, I think we're very fortunate to have some help coming in to try to build back those services. Yeah. Really, because people are starting to really notice some of those services. Yes. We cut things like last year, tree trimming.
Yes.
And now I get on Twitter, I'll get someone who posts, "Mayor, come trim this tree. Look at it. It needs to be trimmed." And part of me, though I wouldn't want to respond this way, thinks like, well, we had to cut somewhere. Yeah. You can't really cut 13, 14 million without seeing a squeeze, and I think particularly in services, and it
Yeah.
seems like people are starting to notice at the same time when we can kind of build those services back up.
Right. No, you're exactly right. We're lucky we have a very good strategic plan here at the City of Wichita, and the City of Wichita has goals, and we try to obviously minimize the impact of reductions by following our strategic plan. But you're exactly right. Everything we do is important. There's nothing that the City of Wichita doesn't do that's not important. We try to reduce expenditures in areas that are of lesser importance. We tend not to impact public safety, but everything is important to somebody, and everything we do, unfortunately, typically reduces service levels to somebody somewhere.
That's right. So talk to us a little bit about the Mill Levy. So Mill Levy is a term that we hear quite a bit. It was 28 years, and Wichita has never adjusted, or 28 consistent years, and we haven't changed the Mill Levy.
Yes.
Can you tell us roughly what the Mill Levy is and how significant it is that we keep holding the line on the Mill Levy?
Yeah. Our mill levy we expect to be about 32.749 for the 2022 budget. And like you indicated, Mayor, that is the 28th year that the City of Wichita has adopted a budget with the same mill levy as the year before.
It's property tax.
Property tax, yes, sir. People's property tax bill is impacted by two things. It's the value of their property and the mill levy rate. The City of Wichita can control one of those variables, the mill levy rate. And again, the City of Wichita has kept ours flat for 28 years. Now, the assessed valuation of your property is determined by the county appraiser, and sometimes that goes up, sometimes that goes down. And that can lead to people's property tax bill changing. But the portion that the city has control over, the mill levy rate, we've kept flat for 28 years.
Right. And you know, and I, as a legislator, I remember knocking doors. My district I represented was pretty condensed as far as area, but we had a lot of senior citizens, retirees, and property taxes were something that came up quite a bit because these are folks on a fixed income. They did everything right, and if it costs more to live in Wichita, they can't just go pick up another shift somewhere. So keeping that mill levy down to do our part in fighting hikes in property taxes is something I get feedback on that people are very much appreciative of.
Yeah.
But moving forward, is it common for cities to be able to hold the line on the mill levy like Wichita has?
I don't want to speak too much about other cities, but I can tell you I'm not aware of any other city in Kansas that has kept their mill levy rate the same every year in the budget for 28 years like City of Wichita. And I also point out that in the metropolitan area, we compare our mill levy to other cities in Sedgwick County and other cities in the metropolitan area and other first-class cities in Kansas. City of Wichita actually has the lowest tax mill levy rate of a first-class city in Kansas who does not have a sales tax. So we're the lowest of the 25 first-class cities. We're also one of the lowest in the MSA, and we're also one of the lower ones in Sedgwick County. So,
that's very good information. So, just kind of switching gears a little bit, we know our tax structure is conservative, and we want it to be. We want to make sure that we focus on particular functions that people expect out of the city.
right.
However, with the ARPA funds, we have a opportunity for investment. Some of the theory behind ARPA funds wasn't just getting us back to where we were pre-pandemic, but also building back, trying to get, or building back better, trying to get to that next economy, get us prepared, kind of, a joke, a shot in the arm, I guess, into our economy post-pandemic. Can you talk to us a little bit in this budget about some of the money that has been set aside and what it can be used for those investments?
Yeah, like you mentioned, ARPA is a tremendous opportunity for the City of Wichita. It allows us to do several things. First and foremost, you mentioned service reductions earlier. A lot of that was caused by the fact that we couldn't fill all the positions we wanted to. We will use ARPA to fill some of those positions, which will allow us to improve our service levels. But we also have an allocation of $20 million that we will seek input from the community on, and we would like to use that money to address community concerns, maybe things like affordable housing or workforce training or small business assistance. So it's really important we get community input on that, but we have $20 million set aside for strategies in those areas. We'll also use some of it, maybe about $23 million, for capital improvement projects, and this will allow us to build some new police stations and the fire station and make some improvements to our libraries. And again, a lot of those will be in communities that were particularly hard hit by the pandemic. So.
And that's good to point out is that the pandemic, what we're seeing, we're not through it completely yet. We're seeing kind of a rise in the numbers, of course. So we knock on wood when we talk about recovery, but we are in a different spot than we were a year ago.
Right.
Not every community or every section of our community was hit the same. Some were hit harder than others. Some, you look at vaccination rates, testing rates in some areas are at a disadvantage than other areas.
Right.
When it comes to those three buckets, such as small business growth and development, we know that over 70% of American jobs right now, the new ones created are coming from small businesses.
Right.
We have affordable housing, and then also, what was the other one? We had affordable housing, and we had workforce training, training people for that next economy.
Right.
How did those come about?
Well, again, we visited with a variety of our partners in the community. We reached out to them and we tried to solicit their opinion on what we can do to move forward, what we can do to address concerns in the community, again, particularly among affected populations. And those were the themes that we kept hearing. So those are the themes that we initially have settled on. And again, we want additional impact to see if those, or additional input, to see if those themes are correct, if those are the things we should spend our money on. But at this point, we believe that these are the areas that would most improve conditions for the most affected populations.
So, and that's important to note here is that the feedback we've gotten from community partners and also from the public falls into these three buckets.
Right.
Now, when we pass the budget, I don't make predictions when it comes to what's going to pass and what isn't, but if it keeps going the way it is as currently presented, what those three buckets, we are just putting those aside, right? There will still be a larger community discussion about how to actually implement policies for affordable housing.
Yes, you're exactly right. Right now it's just conceptual. We are just conceptually trying to figure out how to spend this money. We have 4 years to spend it. That doesn't mean we want to wait for 4 years because we want to get the impact as soon as possible. But the point is, we don't have to rush to spend it. We have time. We will get the community input. We'll do it right. But you're right. We will not make that decision next Tuesday on August 24th. We are just presenting conceptually the plan that we have $20 million allocated for improvements in those areas.
Right, so more umbrellas, and then so for umbrella type topics, but the details are something that we can fill in over the next, we have 4 years suspended, so before then. When it comes to the public and input, I always learned that a budget is a reflection of values. It's also a reflection of what the community expects out of us as a governing body. For folks who want to have those discussions about ways to invest this money, what would be your advice to them? What's the best way that people can get involved in the process?
Well, we've had a number of public meetings already on the budget and on these topics. We've had a social media town hall earlier this year. We have public hearings associated with the budget, the last one of which will be next Tuesday on August 24th. All of those are ways that we've sought input, but I have no doubt that in the future as we go into the fall that we'll have additional opportunities. We'll probably hold additional meetings for folks to provide input. So.
And in your experience here, and I don't know how unique it is, so I'm going to kind of throw this question out at you. Thanks to Councilmember Johnson, who's serving as the vice mayor this year, requested that we had a evening meeting a couple of weeks ago to ensure that folks who can't be here during 9 to 5 could come in and talk to us about the budget. Have we done that before?
I think we have done it once or twice in the past, but it is a relatively new idea, and you're right, it generates a lot of additional input, which we really like. It makes it a lot more convenient for our residents to come and tell us what they think.
Yeah, we saw a lot of folks come in about affordable housing.
Right.
That is something that I think as we see housing prices go up, we want to make sure people have access to the American dream, which is to own a house and have that security. And if this budget passes as is, we will have a bucket roughly around $5 million, what we're looking at now, that can help us advance policy towards keeping housing affordable.
Yes, sir, you're exactly right. That's one of the areas that we want to steer some of our money, and we do have resources available to do that.
So Mark, can you briefly talk about some of the highlights in this budget?
Sure. Like I mentioned, the highlights of this budget are all aligned to the priorities of the City Council. We want to keep people safe, we want to grow the economy, we want to build dependable infrastructure, and we want conditions to live well. So everything that we do is centered around those 4 priorities. And this budget, obviously, as you indicated, allocates dollars to address strategies in those priority areas. For example, in public safety, we have 12 grant-funded firefighters. The grant's going to expire for those in February. The City of Wichita will absorb the cost of those, so we can keep them on, keeping us safe. We also have another $1 million for what we call the Fire Response Optimization Plan. We'll review our fire service, we'll figure out where we need additional people, maybe additional stations, and we have another $1 million allocated for that effort for the fire service. We also have 7 additional police officers. This will complete phase 2 of the staffing study that the City Council considered a couple years ago. We have a couple of civilian positions in police, and we think those are going to be very valuable. They will help us with the social aspects of our policing service. We also have funding for 6 fire stations and 4 extra police stations. Again, that'll help us serve the public better by moving our infrastructure to where it needs to be so that we can provide the best response times.
And that's interesting because last year we had to cut nearly everything, but we held the line when it came to public safety.
Right.
And this year, being able to add these extra positions and to ensure that not only do we hold the line on public safety, but actually contribute more towards that shared value of public safety. Yeah. So just I guess when it comes to our police and firefighters, what is the difference between what's in the budget and then also the CIP? Because I get some questions about, people look at one section of the budget and they say this is the full picture, but we also have this thing called the CIP, which is a different pot of money. Can you just briefly tell folks who are looking towards this what they're looking at?
There are 2 different budgets, but they intertwine very closely. The CIP, or Capital Improvement Program, funds things that are going to last for a long time. Buildings, fire trucks, roads, bridges, things like that. And that's very important for providing public safety. If we don't have the appropriate fire trucks or the appropriate fire stations or the appropriate police stations, we won't be able to provide public safety as well. So that is very important. Now the operating budget funds things that we normally use in a lot shorter term. Salaries of police and firefighter, or police officers and firefighters, or finance people, or gasoline for patrol cars. So the operating budget is more short-term operational type things that we're going to spend almost immediately. The capital improvement program is more longer-term investments and assets that are going to last for a long time, but they are equally important and they both are equally necessary in order to provide the services we want to provide.
So it's important to look at both of them to get a full picture.
Yes, exactly right. I would say that.
Okay, interesting. So also, one of the things last year we were able to do is really, although we had to close the pools, close the splash pads, we really stepped on the gas with getting the improvements done faster. So when they opened up this year, we could take advantage of that time, the downtime, so they worked even better. Can you talk a little bit about, and I think they've been a success, so when we talk about our pool plan, but also parks, what can people expect in this budget for expanding on, I guess, what we would consider those quality of life initiatives?
Right. Yeah, the Aquatics Master Plan, that was maybe a mixed blessing of COVID. It did allow us to accelerate the Aquatics Master Plan and get it done a little bit sooner because our pools were closed, like you indicated. We'll finish up the Aquatics Master Plan, I think, this year, so that's a really good thing. We also have additional funding for improvements in the quality of life area. For example, South Lakes Park, I think there's some opportunities there to invest additional money. We believe we can build a pickleplex to generate economic activity.
A pickleplex?
For pickleball.
I just never heard it called a pickleplex, but
that's what they call it. But those are very popular right now, particularly maybe with the younger viewers, maybe not so much with the more mature people like me, but yeah, we think there's an opportunity there. We also have an opportunity to make some major improvements in McAdams Rec Center maybe with some private funds there. And then finally, LW Clapp, as you know, used to be a golf course. We've transitioned it to parkland. They've conducted a master plan, and we have some funding in for phase 1 of that master plan for LW Clapp Park.
And that master plan looks pretty amazing. It seems like they're really going in the right direction with creating a destination park there.
Yep.
Yeah, and when it comes to adding on to some of the stuff that we have in Wichita, one of the things I've noticed is when we kind of reinvest in some of our community projects, for example, McAdams Pool. It brings people to the pool, and then they also can see the whole campus. Like McAdams campus is amazing.
Yes.
And so when we think about new investments and we're budgeting, how do you really determine what can add towards a already established asset versus creating something kind of totally brand new?
Well, we do a lot of planning. We're very big on planning. McAdams is a perfect example. We had a master plan on McAdams several years ago, and that's what led to the League 42 improvements. That's what led to the pool improvements. And I think that's what's going to lead to the recreation center improvements. You mentioned Aquatics master plan. We had a very comprehensive study on that. That told us what areas we should focus our efforts on, where we should have splash pads, and again, that's what led those efforts. Obviously, LW Clap, we have a master plan there, and that's what's going to lead our efforts there. So we try to do a lot of planning. We try to determine where things are needed. We also try to determine what improvements the community wants. We involve the community in that planning process, and that guides what we do.
And that's something interesting that Wichita does pretty well, where it's not just building, let's say, new baseball diamonds just to have them. It's teaming up with League 42. If there are programs out there that want to partner with the city, utilize public park type assets, I guess, but also run their own program out of that, what's the best way for them to get the ball rolling?
Our park department has been great about partnering with a variety of entities in a variety of different areas. So I'm sure our park department director would love to hear from anybody that's interested in partnering to further improve our recreational services.
So talk to the parks director, who will later, once things get moving, we'll talk to you guys to put it in a budget, and you guys will present to the council.
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Well, very good.
That's how it works. Yep.
Well, Mark, really appreciate you being here.
Yeah. Thank you.
And also thank you for everyone who is watching us at home and for tuning into this episode of What's Up Wichita. If you want to ask a question on next month's show, please send us a short video to social@wichita.gov. Thank you for joining us, and looking forward to the questions.